Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis or biological classification, there's this expectation of precision. It feels like engineering.
Right. It's a very comforting binary. We like things to be visible, to be neatly categorized.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, there it is, it's broken.
Yeah, a dog is a dog. A reptile is a reptile. A fractured tibia is a fractured tibia. The rules of biology, for the most part, play nice with our human need for order.
But then you step into the world of speculative biomechanics and genetic weaponization, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely broken. We're looking at a biological landscape that is, well, it's terrifyingly Murphy.
Terrifying is definitely the right word.
Right, where the lines between a living, breathing organism and a manufactured modular weapons platform just dissolve completely.
It challenges every single boundary we have. I mean, when you start splicing the genome of an Ice Age predator with modern avian neurobiology and doing it for the express purpose of military dominance, you aren't just doing biology anymore.
No, not at all.
You are doing architectural engineering, but with flesh and bone.
And that is the exact premise of today's deep dive. We are stepping into a realm where cinematic nightmares and cutting-edge genetic engineering collide. We aren't just talking about bringing extinct animals back for some ill-advised theme park.
Like in the movies.
Right, exactly. We are looking at the actual theoretical blueprints for weaponizing the very mechanics of nature to create custom-tailored chimeras designed for absolute terrestrial, marine, and aerial dominance.
The sheer level of detail in the speculative biology we're about to unpack is, well, it's staggering. It's an exercise in taking evolutionary extremes and forcing them into a single cohesive unit. One that doesn't just survive, but theoretically functions as a flawless apex predator.
I am so glad you mentioned the level of detail because, well, credit where credit is profoundly due here.
Oh, absolutely.
The entire foundation of our exploration today, specifically the first 6 incredibly dense analytical essays we are pulling from, were authored by Jose Angelo Moore.
Right, the student.
Yes. He is a 17-year-old Filipino senior high school student from San Lorenzo Ruiz de Manila School in Marikina City. And get this, he wrote these as essays for his science class.
That is just incredible to me. The grasp of biology at that age is wild.
It really is. And alongside his brilliant groundwork, we are also analyzing highly detailed speculative blueprints and hybrid combat metrics designed by the Goji Center.
It's just a brilliant synthesis of paleontology, modern zoology, and military tactics.
Yeah.
And for you listening right now, it is vital to understand that this isn't just a sci-fi monster movie pitch.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It's the ultimate thought experiment in anatomy, physics, thermodynamics, and behavioral psychology. By understanding how these hypothetical chimeras are constructed to survive and kill, you gain a profound understanding of how real-world evolutionary traits actually function.
Right, like from the bone density of a woodpecker to the neural networks of a bonobo. It teaches you about the natural world as it exists right now. Okay, so let's start mapping out this descent into madness. Because if you're building a biological military portfolio from scratch, you can't just jump into the sky. You have to start from the ground up.
Literally.
Yeah. Before we even think about aerial dominance or deep-sea stealth, we have to look at the raw, unforgiving physics of mass, momentum, and defense on solid ground.
Gravity and friction are your biggest enemies when you are engineering a multi-ton terrestrial creature. Every ounce of weight has to be justified by the structural integrity of the skeletal frame holding it up.
Right, which brings me to this first massive blueprint. They call it the apex paradox.
Such a great name.
It is. And this thing looks like it was dreamed up by a bioengineer with a blank check and a serious grudge. Let me just list the parts here. It takes the heavy, barrel-chested torso of a Vistatosaurus rex, which, for context, is essentially a fictional hyper-evolved T-Rex.
Right, a massive core.
And it combines that with the elongated serpentine head of a skullcrawler. Then it uses the massive sprinting hind legs of a Carnotaurus, the giant scythe-like arms of a Therizinosaurus, and finishes it off with the heavy club tail and armor of an Ankylosaurus.
Just visualizing the skeletal structure of that, it is an absolute chimera of biological overkill.
It's a Frankenstein monster of dinosaurs.
It really is. But let's look past the sheer horror of it and break down the actual mechanics, starting with the skull. Because the dental trifecta this elongated skullcrawler head provides is a masterclass in modular lethality.
A dental trifecta.
Yeah. Think about a standard T-Rex. It just has a mouthful of bone crushers. bite and crush. It's a blunt instrument.
Right.
But the apex paradox uses its long wedge-like snout to house 3 entirely distinct weapon systems, and each one serves a different stage of an attack.
I noticed that in the diagrams. It's almost like a biological assembly line of trauma.
Yeah.
At the very front of the snout, it has the teeth of a Giganotosaurus. Now, these aren't thick teeth. They are blade-like, deeply serrated, and laterally compressed.
Xiphodont dentition.
Right. So they are essentially rows of butcher's shears right at the tip of the snout. I'm assuming that's for initial contact.
Yes, exactly. When a creature with the xiphodont teeth bites, it doesn't just clamp down. The jaw mechanics involve a distinct pulling motion.
Like a saw.
Precisely.
Mm.
Those front teeth are designed for slicing wide, shallow chunks of flesh and inducing catastrophic blood loss instantly. It allows the apex paradox to execute quick, drive-by slashing attacks on larger, heavily armored vehicles or targets without having to commit its massive body weight to a full stationary grapple.
But if it does want to grapple, that's where the middle of the jaw comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because it transitions to suchomimus teeth. Now, these are fascinating because they are conical, slightly curved backward, and finely serrated. They aren't meant to cut.
No, they are meant to act as an inescapable vice. The suchomimus was a spinosaurid, a fish eater.
Right, catching slippery prey.
Exactly. When you were hunting slippery, thrashing prey, a flat, blade-like tooth might snap under the lateral torsion. But a conical tooth distributes the pressure evenly.
Oh, that makes sense.
So once those front Giganotosaurus teeth slice the target open, the middle suchomimus teeth lock them in place. The more the target struggles, the deeper those backward curving cones dig in.
And then comes the finale. If the target is dragged all the way to the back of the throat, closest to the jaw hinge, they meet the Tyrannosaurus rex teeth. Thick, wide, banana-shaped bone crushers.
This is where we see a beautiful application of Class 3 lever mechanics in biology.
Lever mechanics.
Yeah. The jaw joint is the fulcrum. The closer the prey is to the fulcrum, the more immense the bite force. The front of the jaw snaps and shears with speed, the middle clamps with precision, and the back uses the raw mechanical advantage of the jaw hinge to completely pulverize armor, chassis, and bone.
That is deeply unsettling. But looking at the structural analysis here, I'm seeing a massive biomechanical flaw. The blueprint notes that this hybrid also features the massive solid bone frill and heavy brow horns of a triceratops, bolted onto the back of that lightweight skull-crawler head.
Yeah, that is an engineering nightmare.
That's what I'm thinking. A skull-crawler's skull is naturally dynamic and relatively light to allow for that serpentine neck movement. If you bolt a heavy triceratops frill and dense horns onto it, the leverage problem becomes catastrophic.
Completely unbalanced.
Right. The center of gravity is pulled so far forward that physically the creature should just faceplant the moment it tries to sprint on those Carnotaurus legs. How does a bioengineer fix that center of mass without just making the creature a stationary statue?
Well, you balance the equation at the opposite end of the lever. That is why the heavy Ankylosaurus tail club isn't just an afterthought, it is a vital structural necessity.
Oh, it acts as a counterbalance.
Exactly. The Ankylosaurus tail is incredibly dense. It's composed of fused vertebrae and massive osteoderms, culminating in a bone club that weighs hundreds of pounds.
So it's basically a giant biological pendulum.
Right. By extending that massive weight straight out behind the creature, it perfectly offsets the heavy Triceratops frill at the front. The heavy V-Rex torso acts as the central anchor, and the center of mass is leveled out right over the Carnotaurus hips. It's a biological seesaw, perfectly balanced on a fulcrum of muscle.
Nature's seesaw of death. It's fascinating how one extreme mutation forces a corresponding mutation on the other side of the body just to maintain baseline physics.
It's all connected.
But as terrifying as the apex paradox is, there's another terrestrial project in these blueprints that feels far more calculated, militarized. They call it Project Shieldhound Behemoth.
Yes. The Shieldhound Behemoth is where we move away from just mashing massive dinosaurs together for raw power and start looking at modular, highly specialized military platforms.
Right.
This isn't a wild animal. It's designed to be a living, breathing main battle tank.
And the core chassis of the Shieldhound relies heavily on the Ankylosaurus. Low-slung, wide-set, covered from head to tail in near-impenetrable fused bony plates, or osteoderms.
It is essentially a biological bunker. It can shrug off small arms fire and even some heavy ballistics.
But they didn't keep the standard dinosaur legs. Instead of the stiff columnar front legs of an ankylosaur, they spliced in the front legs of a mammalian lion.
Which changes everything.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I'm having trouble wrapping my head around that. Combining the rigid, column-like back legs of a dinosaur with the articulated, flexible front paws of a lion sounds like trying to weld the front half of a Porsche onto the back half of a bulldozer. How does the creature even coordinate its steps without tripping over its own biology?
That is an excellent analogy because it highlights the fundamental difference between reptilian and mammalian locomotion. Dinosaur limbs, especially on heavily armored quadrupeds, are columnar. They are built almost entirely to bear immense vertical weight.
Right, like pillars.
Exactly, not to execute complex lateral maneuvers. Mammalian limbs, specifically feline limbs, are highly articulated. They possess a massive range of motion in the shoulder scapula, which isn't rigidly attached to a collarbone like ours, but floats in muscle.
So they have shock absorption.
Incredible shock absorption.
Yeah.
And crucially, they are capable of extreme pronation, which is the inward rotation of the forearm.
So a dinosaur couldn't do that.
No, their wrists were generally locked.
Yeah.
By giving this heavily armored tank lion front limbs, you granted the ability to execute explosive, low-to-the-ground pounces, swipe with immense lateral force, and bank sharply around corners in an urban environment.
Wow.
It takes a creature that should move like a slow tortoise and gives it the agility of a heavyweight boxer.
But the real engine of this thing is in the back, the Edmontosaurus caudifemoralis muscle. I had to look this up. This is the primary running muscle in dinosaurs, anchoring from the tail deep into the thigh bone, the femur.
It is the biological supercharger of the Mesozoic era. And the genius of the shieldhound is how it weaponizes that muscle.
How so?
It anchors this hyper-developed hadrosaur caudifemoralis to an American alligator tail.
Yeah.
Now, an alligator tail is built for immense, lateral, side-to-side swinging power to propel it through water.
Right.
By connecting the caudifemoralis to that lateral power, it creates a completely novel form of locomotion. It translates the side-to-side muscular tension of the alligator tail into pure, unstoppable, forward-driving kinetic force for the hind legs.
So the tail is literally acting as a metronome of kinetic energy, driving the back legs forward to keep up with the agile lion front legs.
It completely negates the dead weight of the ankylosaurus armor. But your earlier point about welding a Porsche to a bulldozer brings up the most complex hurdle of this entire build the neuromuscular bridge.
Right. How does the brain even coordinate that? You've got cat legs up front and a dinosaur engine in the back.
If you put a standard reptilian or dinosaurian brain into this body, it would suffer from severe ataxia. It wouldn't be able to walk, let alone fight.
The brain just couldn't process the signals.
Exactly. Mammalian brains are wired for rapid, high-frequency motor neuron firing to govern those highly dexterous floating lion shoulders and pronating paws. Avian and dinosaurian hind limbs rely on entirely different spinal reflex arcs. The software simply does not match the hardware.
So to fix the software, the blueprints outline a complete overhaul of the neural matrix. They don't use a dinosaur brain at all. They introduce a 3-in-1 hybrid brain system. And the components of this brain are, well, they're wild. The first foundational layer is the German Shepherd.
The tactical core. A wild animal is unpredictable. A German Shepherd provides ingrained linear logic, flawless adherence to complex commands, and a strict understanding of a friend or foe perimeter.
So it's basically a loyal soldier.
Exactly. It eliminates the rogue monster trope. It gives the creature high operational discipline. It understands formation, patrol routes, and defense of a handler.
But a dog is just a dog. Layer 2 of the brain is a bonobo. Now, I see they layered in a primate brain here. I'm assuming that's purely for tool use, like a chimp using a stick to get ants, but scaled up to using a steel beam to breach a door.
Tool use is a part of it, yes, but it goes much deeper into spatial emotional intelligence and abstract reasoning.
How does that apply to a combat scenario?
Let's frame it like this. A German Shepherd will chase a target down a hallway until it hits a locked door, and then it will scratch at the door or bark.
Right.
A bonobo-brained behemoth will realize the target is hiding behind a reinforced wall, visually calculate the structural load-bearing pillars of the room, and intentionally use its lion limbs to smash those specific pillars, bringing the entire ceiling down on the target.
Oh, wow. That's smart.
It allows for environmental manipulation. It understands cause and effect on a structural level. It can think around corners.
Which is terrifying. But then we get to the third layer of the brain, which initially completely baffled me, the caribou, or the Asian water buffalo. I looked at that and thought, what tactical advantage does a grazing water buffalo bring to a super predator?
It acts as the crucial emotional ballast.
Emotional ballast.
Yes. The fatal flaw of the bonobo matrix is emotional volatility. Highly intelligent primates can suffer from acute battlefield trauma, panic, or erratic insubordination when placed under intense pain or prolonged chaotic stress. They understand fear too well.
Right, they get scared just like we do.
But a water buffalo, on the other hand, is the ultimate stoic juggernaut. It possesses an unflappable, low-reactivity baseline.
So it absorbs the psychological shock of warfare.
Exactly. To really understand this, let's look at one of the 4 specific head and hind leg variants of the shield hound, the Ankylomylus destetodon.
Which roughly translates to hammer of the devastating tooth.
Yes. It uses a heavy V-Rex head and massive Tyrannosaurus rex hind legs. It is designed purely for urban breaching. Its entire purpose is ramming through concrete bunkers and fortified walls.
Okay.
Now, think about the jarring, deafening kinetic feedback of ramming a multi-ton skull into solid reinforced concrete at 30 miles per hour. A highly sensitive primate brain would panic. A dog brain would refuse to charge a second time. The pain receptors would scream to stop.
Right, if you tell a dog to run headfirst into a brick wall, it's going to stop to protect itself.
But the Carabao matrix intercepts that sensory overload. When it takes heavy ballistic fire or sustains a massive concussion from a breach, it doesn't process it as panic. The pain merely triggers the water buffalo's legendary stubbornness.
It just leans into it.
Yes. It drops its heavy V-Rex head and pushes through with total, pain-tolerant forward momentum. It converts trauma into a berserker overdrive.
That is unbelievable bioengineering. It's not just building a body, it's chemically tuning the mind to ignore its own self-preservation instincts. And there are 3 other variants of this shield hound based on the combat scenario, right?
Yes, highly specialized.
So if you aren't fighting in a city but you need to clear a dense jungle environment, you deploy the Suchoankylus edmontoranus.
The jungle ambusher. This one swaps the heavy T-Rex legs for agile, spring-loaded Utah raptor legs and uses the long, narrow, gripping snout of a Suchoamus we discussed earlier.
Because in a dense rainforest, you can't run in a straight line with a heavy head. You need to pivot, stalk, and grapple in tight spaces.
Precisely. Utilizing the bonobo brain, this variant can actually use its highly articulated lion paws to hoist its heavy armored frame up onto low ravines or dense tree falls, completely masking its stumble profile in the mud.
Oh, man.
Then it uses the Carabao patience to sit completely motionless in stagnant humidity for hours, letting the jungle grow around it, waiting for an enemy patrol to walk by.
Then, for massive open battlefields, there's the Giganankylosaurus reichnitor. It uses a Giganotosaurus head full of those Xiphodont slicing teeth and Utah raptor legs. The blueprints describe it acting like an armored sheepdog, using the German Shepherd matrix to literally herd enemy infantry into tight kill zones before executing sweeping lateral bites that just cleave through entire squads.
It's a psychological terror weapon designed to maximize casualties and force a rout in an open field.
And the final terrestrial variant takes us to the water's edge, the Brutosaurus suchocenter. It uses a saltwater crocodile head and T-Rex hind legs.
The ultimate riverine checkpoint card. The flat crocodilian skull allows it to submerge with only its nostrils and eyes exposed, disrupting surface tension minimally. The Carabao brain makes it perfectly comfortable resting in deep, thick mud, slowing its heart rate to conserve oxygen.
But those heavy T-Rex legs on a river guard seem counterintuitive at first. Wouldn't they just weigh it down in the water? But looking at the density metrics here, they serve as biological anchors, don't they?
That is exactly their function. When an enemy patrol boat passes overhead, the crocodile jaws clamp down on the hull.
Okay.
Now, a normal crocodile would have to rely entirely on his body weight to drag the boat under, and it might just get pulled along by the boat's engines. But because the massive T-Rex legs are pinned deep into the riverbed, acting as structural pilings, the creature doesn't give an inch.
It's rooted to the floor.
Yes. It holds its ground and uses the alligator tail to initiate a multi-ton death roll, utilizing the tension between its anchored legs and its jaw to completely tear the boat apart.
It is flawless biological synergy. So the Shieldhound behemoth gives you the blunt force trauma to take a city block or hold a river. But modern warfare isn't always about massive destruction.
No, often it's very targeted.
Right. If you're engaging in a hostage situation or you need to eliminate a single high-value target in a compound, dropping a multi-ton biological tank is a failure. You don't need a sledgehammer anymore. You need a scalpel. So how do the bioengineers scale down that lethality into something that can fit through a doorway?
They pivot away from heavy armor and focus on speed, stealth, and lethal efficiency. enter the Mortellodon anthropophagus.
The deadly-toothed human eater, a very literal translation. This seems to be an iteration of the cinematic Indoraptor, but completely rebuilt from the ground up to eliminate conflicting predatory instincts and optimize it for surgical targeted elimination.
They don't start with a massive T-Rex or a heavily armored Ankylosaurus this time. They use the Utahraptor as the base frame, which is incredibly smart.
Why the Utah?
The Utahraptor is sturdy, incredibly powerful for its size, and crucially, has a jaw gape of nearly 80 degrees. It allows for massive bite surface area without the cumbersome weight of a larger theropod skull.
And I see they weave in that Edmontosaurus leg and tail anatomy again, but not for a battering ram effect this time. It's for stamina. It gives the creature thick, shock-absorbing foot pads, allowing it to sprint for miles silently without exhausting its leg joints or shattering its metatarsals on hard concrete.
It creates a silent runner. But it's the arsenal inside the mouth of this thing that is truly horrifying. It has a baseline bite force of about 1,600 psi, which is comparable to a modern adult saltwater crocodile.
That's strong, but not T-Rex strong.
True, but it's how that force is applied. The front of the jaw houses the fangs of a Hoplophonius.
A prehistoric nimravid, often nicknamed the Butcher of the Badlands, basically an early saber-tooth.
Right. And we discussed earlier how a jaw works like a lever. Now we have to look at the mathematics of surface area and kinetic energy transfer. If you bite down with flat teeth, that 1,600 psi is distributed across a wide area. It bruises, it crushes, but it might not penetrate modern ceramics. However, if you funnel all 1,600 pounds of that pressure onto two needle-sharp points the size of a ballpoint pen.
Oh, the PSI at the absolute tip skyrockets into the tens of thousands.
Exactly. The localized pressure is astronomical. It will effortlessly punch through Kevlar weave, shatter silicon carbide ceramic plating, or sink straight through a target's ribcage into vital arteries with zero resistance.
And they made sure it's a guaranteed kill, even if it just nicks you. Behind the saber-tooth fangs, it has the incisors of a vampire bat. These teeth lack protective enamel on the back edge, meaning as they grind against each other, they perpetually sharpen themselves like razor blades. But the real biological payload is the saliva. It's laced with a venomous protein called draculin.
Draculin is a massive glycoprotein anticoagulant. It specifically inhibits coagulation factors IX and X in the blood cascade, which is a horrifyingly brilliant tactical addition for an assassin.
Because let's say the target is surrounded by guards. The target manages to survive the initial ambush and runs away. The wound simply will not clot. The draculin ensures they bleed freely.
It's unstoppable bleeding.
They will leave a massive, continuous blood trail. The Mortellodon doesn't have to stay and fight the guards. It can just bite once, retreat into the shadows, and follow the scent of the bleeding target at its leisure until the target collapses from hypovolemic shock.
It turns a minor laceration into a fatal time bomb. And just to ensure that those teeth never break if they accidentally bite down on a soldier's steel helmet or a rifle barrel, the engineers added the genetics of the short-tailed shrew.
Okay, a shrew. A tiny, mouse-like mammal. How does that help?
The short-tailed shrew is one of the very few venomous mammals on Earth. But its dental biochemistry is the real prize here. During the development of its teeth, specialized cells called ameloblasts actively process environmental iron and deposit it directly into the enamel matrix of the tooth tips before they erupt.
Wait, it naturally grows metallic, iron-laced teeth.
It essentially creates a biological steel alloy. By scaling that genetic trait up to the Mortellodon, this hybrid possesses fangs reinforced with heavy iron deposits. It can literally gnaw through a reinforced steel door hinge or military-grade body armor without dulling or chipping its bite.
Okay, so the offense is perfectly engineered, but a surgical assassin needs to be able to take a hit if it's discovered in a tight corridor. Instead of heavy, slow dinosaur bone plates, the Mortellodon is armored with the scales of the Arapaima, a giant predatory fish from the Amazon River.
Let's contextualize this with modern human body armor. You've got your woven Kevlar, which is flexible but susceptible to piercing. You've got silicon carbide ceramic plates, which stop bullets but shatter upon impact. We rate that military ceramic at a fracture toughness of maybe 3 to 5 on the scale.
Okay.
Now pull an Arapaima out of the Amazon. Its scales have a fracture toughness score of 6.4.
That's significantly higher than the ceramic plates soldiers wear.
By a wide margin. The Arapaima scale is an evolutionary marvel called a Boulogin structure. It consists of a highly mineralized, rock-hard outer plating designed to shatter the incoming kinetic force of a piranha bite or a bullet. Beneath that rigid outer shell is a flexible, highly organized inner layer of collagen fibers. These fibers are stacked in rotated layers, exactly like plywood.
So the outer layer shatters the bullet, and the inner plywood layer acts like a catcher's mitt to absorb the kinetic shock so the internal organs aren't bruised.
Precisely. It offers bulletproof protection while maintaining the total acrobatic flexibility of a sleek predator. The scales slide over each other effortlessly.
And because it's from an arapaima, which is an obligate air-breathing fish that lives in oxygen-poor Amazonian waters, the hybrid inherits specialized blood vessels and a heavily modified swim bladder that acts as a lung.
Which has a huge tactical benefit.
It also possesses a windpipe valve, meaning if a defending squad throws tear gas, smoke grenades, or a toxic aerosol trap into a room, the Mortalodon can simply clamp its windpipe shut, rely on the heavy oxygen stores in its blood, and sprint through the toxic cloud entirely unaffected while the humans are choking.
It renders human chemical defensive measures completely obsolete.
But here's where I want to push back on the design. If you are trying to build the ultimate stealthy killing machine, why use a dog brain? Specifically, the blueprints mention splicing the extinct Molossian hound with the bonobo. Why not something traditionally terrifying and stealthy, like a wolf, a leopard, or a tiger?
What's fascinating here is, well, it comes back to the liability of a wild animal. A solitary predator, like a tiger, is fundamentally untrustable. It attacks whatever is closest when it is hungry or agitated. It is a liability, not an asset. You cannot deploy a solitary feline into a complex hostage situation or an urban infiltration and expect it to hold its position, follow a laser sight, or respond to silent hand signals.
Because it has no concept of a pack or a leader.
Exactly. The Molossian hound was an ancient, massive war dog used by the Greeks and Romans. By using its neural framework, you ingrain deep genetic pack loyalty and an oxytocin feedback loop. It inherently understands hierarchy.
So it actually wants to work with humans.
Yes. It is biologically wired to read human facial expressions and body language. It actively seeks to bond with its handler. When you mix that deep-seated protective loyalty with the bonobo's spatial intelligence, you have an operative that can coordinate with a human strike team flawlessly, communicate silently, and execute complex, multi-stage infiltration plans.
And to make sure that strike team is never seen coming, they drape the whole thing in the skin of a water anole lizard.
It's an incredible stealth mechanic. The water anole has highly advanced disruptive camouflage, capable of shifting its chromatophores to blend into foliage, concrete, or muddy water. But the bioengineers tweaked the pigmentation expression.
How so?
They designed it so that when the creature shifts its colors in the dark, the pattern that remains on its face subtly resembles a stark white human skull.
Which is just cruel. That's psychological warfare layered on top of physical dominance.
It is highly effective at inducing instantaneous panic, which slows human reaction time. But the anole skin has one more vital trick. The scales are hydrophobic and designed to trap a microscopic layer of air tightly against the body.
What does that do?
This allows the Mortalodon to seamlessly slip into a river or a moat, essentially turning into a biological submarine. It doesn't have to swim at the surface. It can crawl across the bottom of a riverbed, completely unseen and insulated by its air layer, and silently yank a patrol guard right off a dock into the depths.
Okay. We've conquered the land. We have the shield hound behemoth shattering the front gates, and the Mortalodon picking off the commanders in the shadows. But if we are truly mapping out global biological dominance, we have to look to the largest continuous battlefield on Earth, covering over 70% of the planet.
The ocean. And transitioning to a marine environment completely rewrites the engineering rulebook. Gravity is far less of a factor, allowing for massive structural growth. But pressure, freezing temperatures, and total sensory deprivation become the new lethal obstacles. You can't just drop a heavy terrestrial dinosaur into the Marianas Trench and expect it to function.
Right. The physics of water demand entirely different shapes and thermal systems. So let's plunge into the freezing depths and look at the 3 distinct marine operatives outlined here. Let's start with the submarine dreadnought, the Thalassodromeus calum, the scourge of the seas.
This chimera is an absolute titan. The core body and hypocircle tail, meaning a downward curving tail fluke, similar to modern sharks, are taken from the Mosasaurus. This provides serpentine, undulating power for long distance, steady state cruising across oceanic basins.
But the head is a heavily reinforced saltwater crocodile skull, the highest bite force of any living animal, but flattened for hydrodynamics. However, looking at the jaw mechanics, it doesn't just bite and hold, it shears.
Yes, because of the Dunkleostis integration. For those who aren't familiar, Dunkleostis was an ancient armored placoderm fish from the Devonian period. It didn't have true teeth.
What did it have instead?
Instead, it had massive exposed bony plates extending directly from its jawbone that naturally ground and sharpened against each other every single time it opened and closed its mouth.
Like self-sharpening biological scissors.
Exactly. A multi-10 guillotine. The chelym uses the conical crocodile teeth at the front of the jaw to grip, and the dunkleosteus plates at the back of the jaw to effortlessly shear through the thick steel hulls of submersibles, underwater cables, or the thick blubber of massive whales.
And to protect itself during these engagements, the front half of its body is encased in that same dunkleosteus dermal bone armor.
Right.
But here's the physics problem. It's swimming around with a medieval knight's breastplate on its front half and a long, fleshy tail in the back. How does it not just become top-heavy, roll over, and sink?
It requires two crucial anatomical additions to maintain pitch and roll stability. First, the megalodon dorsal fin. A rigid, towering stabilizer right in the center of its back prevents the cylindrical body from rolling during high-speed, violent underwater dogfights.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, the steering mechanism. It doesn't use the stiff hydrofoil flippers of a shark. It uses the front flippers of a bottlenose dolphin.
Which are mammalian limbs.
Right, and therefore highly articulated on the inside. Beneath the skin of a dolphin flipper is essentially a human hand structure, with a humerus, radius, ulna, and elongated phalanges.
Really?
Yes, this internal skeletal structure allows the massive creature to cut the water, making precise pitch, roll, and banking adjustments, pivoting on a dime inside tight underwater caverns or around naval shipyards.
But the most terrifying part of the chelym isn't its armor or its bite, it's how it hunts in the pitch-blank abyss. It uses the sonar of a sperm whale. Now, my understanding of dolphin sonar is that they just use clicks to see their surroundings, but the blueprint says it weaponizes the sound.
We have to look at the anatomy of the sperm whale's head. It contains the phonic lips, which generate the click, the spermaceti organ, which acts as a massive acoustic lens, and the melon, which focuses the beam of sound.
Okay.
Sound travels over 4 times faster and with much more concussive force underwater than it does in the air, because water is far denser and less compressible.
So it's not just a loud noise, it's a physical shockwave.
The chelym can focus these acoustic clicks into a directional underwater flashbang exceeding 230 decibels. At close range, that level of acoustic energy will physically rupture the cellular membranes and eardrums of human divers, or instantly stun giant squid and enemy submersibles from a distance using pure, invisible kinetic energy.
It is the ultimate heavy enforcer. But the ocean isn't just about the deep, slow-moving abyss. You need speed. You need a pursuit craft to intercept fast-moving torpedoes or patrol boats. Which brings us to the second marine chimera, the Thalassavonator gladius, the pelagic gladiator.
This one abandons heavy armor entirely and is built like a living torpedo. The overall shape is the teardrop fusiform silhouette of a yellowfin tuna, covered entirely in megalodon dermal denticles, microscopic tooth-like scales that channel water smoothly over the body to eliminate hydrodynamic drag. It moves through the water almost completely silently.
And its primary weapon is exactly what its name implies. It features the rostrum, or the elongated bill of a swordfish. This dense, bony spear allows it to slice through schools of prey or violently ram rival hybrids, inflicting deep internal organ trauma without ever having to open its mouth.
But the real engineering marvel of the Gladius is its thermodynamics. If it's operating as a pursuit craft, chasing targets from the 80-degree tropical surface all the way down to the near-freezing abyssal zone, a normal reptile would suffer massive thermal shock. Its muscles would seize up, its heart rate would plummet, and it would become sluggish.
So how do they prevent that?
They integrate a brilliant physiological system called the rate mirabile, or wonderful net. It is a highly complex countercurrent heat exchange system of blood vessels, borrowed from both the yellowfin tuna and the leatherback sea turtle.
How does that work in practice?
As the creature swims, its massive swimming muscles generate intense heat. Normally, in a fish or reptile, that warm blood travels to the gills or skin, and the heat is instantly lost to the freezing ocean. But in the rete mirabile, the veins carrying the cold blood from the skin run right alongside the arteries carrying the warm blood from the core. The heat transfers across the blood vessel walls. The cold blood is warmed before it reaches the heart, and the heat never leaves the core of the body.
So it essentially remains internally warm-blooded despite being a fish-reptile hybrid. It doesn't suffer any performance drop. It can sprint at maximum capacity in freezing waters.
Precisely. It keeps its brain, its swimming muscles, and its massive ichthyosaur's eyes significantly warmer than the surrounding water, ensuring high-speed processing and perfect vision in the dark.
And what about the pressure?
Its armor reflects this need for deep diving flexibility. Instead of rigid bone plates that would shatter under the immense atmospheric pressure of the deep sea, it has the thick, oil-saturated leathery hide of a leatherback turtle, reinforced with thousands of tiny disconnected osteoderms. It absorbs and compresses under crushing abyssal pressure without sacrificing agility.
Okay, so we have the armored submarine and the high-speed torpedo. But here's where the marine portfolio gets deeply weird and highly tactical. The third marine asset, the Siren of Venatrix, the Mermaid of Death.
This is perhaps the most unconventional chimera discussed in the entire blueprint.
It uses a false killer whale as the base chassis, which the analysis points out is a brilliant choice because false killer whales are incredibly social, highly trainable, and regularly form mixed species pods with other dolphins in the wild.
That's right.
This allows the Siren to actively camouflage itself within a normal biological pod of dolphins to travel globally without triggering enemy sonar nets or naval anomaly alarms.
Right, it's a deep cover operative hiding in plain sight. And to allow it to stay hidden during operations, it incorporates the internal biochemistry of Cuvier's beaked whale, which currently holds the real-world record for the longest and deepest dives of any air-breathing mammal. The Siren possesses extreme concentrations of myoglobin in its muscle tissues.
Myoglobin being the protein that binds oxygen in muscles.
Yes. It stores massive, hyper-concentrated amounts of oxygen directly in its tissues, allowing it to dive almost 3 kilometers straight down and stay completely submerged and active for hours without needing to surface for a breath.
But the physical anatomy is where my brain broke when I read this. It has the tail flippers of an ichthyosaur, the teeth of a macropredatory sperm whale, and the hands of a sea otter.
I know, it sounds bizarre.
Okay, I understand making a giant sea monster, but giving a whale the hands of a sea otter, that seems absurd. Here's where it gets really interesting. Why on earth would a marine apex predator need hands? Doesn't that just create massive hydrodynamic drag?
If we look at this purely as a wild animal, yes, it seems entirely contradictory to efficient swimming. But this raised an important question for the bioengineers. What is the actual mission parameter? As we established with the Mortalodon, this isn't just an animal, it's a covert operative. Hands allow the Siren to perform complex mechanical tasks no other marine asset can achieve.
Oh, wow. I see where you're going.
It can swim up to a cartel submersible in the pitch black and physically plant a magnetic explosive charge on the hull. It can delicately dismantle underwater wire fencing or defuse mines around a high-security naval base.
Unbelievable.
Or, in close quarters underwater combat, it can physically grapple enemy human divers, rip off their masks, and strip them of their oxygen tanks. The sea otter genetics give it a specialized opposable thumb and incredible manual dexterity, which is a massive tactical advantage over a creature that can only bite or ram.
That is deeply unsettling. A massive whale that can just reach out and grab you in the dark. And if you try to fight back, if you shoot it with a spear gun or a rival predator bites it, it deploys a horrific defense mechanism spliced from the Pacific hagfish.
The hagfish slime. This is one of nature's most bizarre defensive adaptations. These specialized glands run along the side of the Siren's body. If the skin is punctured or the creature is stressed, it vents a concentrated fluid filled with thread-like mucin proteins.
And what happens when those proteins hit the water?
The moment those coiled proteins touch seawater, they rapidly unravel and expand to roughly 10,000 times their original volume in milliseconds.
10,000 times. It instantly creates a massive, suffocating cloud of highly fibrous, sticky slime.
It completely alters the viscosity of the surrounding water. It instantly clogs the gills of any attacking shark, suffocating them, or fouls the intake valves and propellers of an enemy submersible, entirely immobilizing it.
And as if a suffocating cloud of expanding gelatinous slime wasn't bad enough, the bioengineers spiced it up with the bioluminescent bacteria of a bobtail squid.
Naturally.
The Vibrio fishery bacteria live in a symbiotic relationship within the slime vents. When the slime is violently released into the water, the bacteria react to the sudden oxygenation and create a blinding flash of bioluminescent light. So the ensnared enemy isn't just choking in the dark. They are turned into a glowing, blind target, lit up like a Christmas tree in the pitch-black ocean for the Siren to easily finish off with those sperm whale teeth.
It is a flawless integration of offensive utility, mechanical sabotage, and defensive evasion. It dominates the tactical marine space completely.
Which brings us to the final frontier. We've secured the solid ground, we've conquered the freezing depths. The final portfolio for our biological military is the sky, the Imperator line.
Engineering sustained, Powered flight at massive, terrifying scales requires breaking the biological limits of modern birds.
Right, because birds have a strict weight limit if they want to get off the ground. The Imperator project uses a base genome designated homegrown in the USA for the 4th of July. The foundation is the cryodraken, which was a giant Asdarchid pterosaur from North America with wingspans exceeding 10 meters.
And choosing an Asdarchid pterosaur solves the fundamental physics problem of heavy flight. Modern birds are bipedal. When an eagle or an albatross wants to take off, it has to rely entirely on the muscular launch strength of its two hind legs to vault its body high enough into the air for the wings to complete a full downstroke. As a bird gets heavier, the leg muscles have to get exponentially heavier to launch them, which eventually makes the entire creature too heavy to fly. It's a biological dead end.
But pterosaurs weren't bipedal.
Exactly. Pterosaurs were quadrupedal. When they were on the ground, they folded their massive wings up and walked on their robust front knuckles. By using the cryodraken genome, the Imperator hybrid utilizes a quadrupedal vaulting launch mechanism.
How does that work?
It uses the immense, thick muscles of its front arms, the humerus and radius, to essentially pole vault itself violently into the air, allowing it to take off rapidly, even at massive multi-ton weights.
So they have the pterosaur launch system combined with the stamina of the Aeolornis, an Ice Age giant flying bird, and the Woodward's eagle. But they also throw in the Deinonychus, a raptor dinosaur. Why add a ground-dwelling raptor to a flying unit?
Because a giant pterosaur, for all its size, is incredibly awkward in dense environments. It can't perch well on narrow branches or climb vertical structures. The Deinonychus genome provides the hybrid with strong, highly articulated forearms tipped with sharp, hooked talons. It grants this massive aerial asset the ability to land in a heavy jungle canopy, climb vertical concrete skyscrapers, and perch silently like an overgrown eagle.
And there are 3 distinct national variants of this Imperator line: red, white, and blue. Let's start with the red variant, the Imperator Ulysses.
Named after the Civil War general, this is the heavy lifter of the squad, built for endurance, soaring, and transport.
It has scaled-up bald eagle talons that are 10 inches long, capable of generating over 1,000 psi of grip force. It can literally swoop down and pluck a fully grown human, a payload crate, or a small vehicle right off the ground without breaking its flight path.
But it isn't strictly an offensive weapon. The red variant is heavily designed for search and rescue operations. That's why it incorporates the DNA of the ruby-throated hummingbird.
Which feels totally out of place on a giant murder bird. A hummingbird.
Tactically, it's brilliant. A hummingbird's feathers possess dazzling structural coloration and iridescence. In direct sunlight, the Imperator Ulysses flashes a brilliant metallic red. If a squad or a hiker is lost in a vast desert or a dense mountain range, they just look up to see this massive iridescent red beacon circling high above, signaling that extraction has arrived. It also doubles as a visual intimidation tactic against ground predators.
Then you have the white variant, the Avampyr suzani. This is the coastal scout. It mixes the base flying genome with the razorbill and the cormorant, which are diving birds.
This is an all-terrain triphibian sentry. Thanks to a heavy waterproof oil coating his pale feathers and a specialized Gens skeletal structure that reduces natural avian buoyancy, it can fold its wings back into a sleek dart and plunge dive like a bullet into the ocean.
Wow.
It can dive 200 feet underwater, swim aggressively using its powerful wings to inspect or tag a cartel submarine, and then burst back out of the water, utilizing that pterosaur vault off the water's surface to take to the skies.
It's a living torpedo that can fly, and its corneas are genetically modified to instantly compensate for the way water warps light refraction, giving it perfect, undistorted aim from the sky down into the ocean, or from the ocean looking up into the sky.
But if the red is the heavy lifter and the white is the scout, the blue variant is the scalpel, the Imperator Armistead.
The Night Ghost. This thing is straight out of a horror movie. It's smaller, built for pure stealth, and its wings are lined with the specialized fringed feathers of a barn owl.
The acoustic stealth of a barn owl is incredible. The soft fringes on the trailing edges of their feathers break up the air turbulence that normally creates the whooshing sound of flight. It renders the Armistead's flight entirely silent. You would never hear it coming in the dark.
And its primary weapon isn't its talons, it's its beak. They heavily enhance the cranial DNA of the ivory-billed woodpecker. No, wait, a woodpecker.
Yes. A woodpecker have an unbelievably specialized neck and skull structure to survive constant, massive decelerations. Its skull contains highly dense, trabeculae spongy, shock-absorbing bone. Furthermore, its hyoid bone, which supports the tongue, actually splits and wraps all the way around the back of its skull, acting as a biological seatbelt for the brain to prevent concussions.
So when you scale that up,
When you scale that extreme shock-absorbing anatomy up to a creature the size of a small plane, its peck becomes a devastating kinetic weapon.
the structural analysis compares it to a sledgehammer swinging behind a steel spear point.
Exactly. It can perch silently on the roof of a heavily fortified bunker or an armored vehicle and literally drill its beak through the roofing material or bulletproof glass with hundreds of newtons of force, injecting pure terror into a sealed, supposedly safe environment.
And to make the terror complete, it has the vocal cords of a northern mockingbird. It can perfectly mimic the sounds of car alarms, distant sirens, or specific human voices crying for help to lure targets out of hiding or confuse enemy squads in the dark.
It is the ultimate psychological terror asset.
Okay, I have to stop you though, because all three of these flying variants share one common genetic additive that I cannot stop thinking about: the Ice Age vampire bat. So we're building a flying Swiss Army knife with eagle talons and woodpecker skulls. But adding vampire bat DNA, that feels like a trope. It feels like something thrown in just for shock value. What tactical advantage does drinking blood actually provide to a giant eagle pterosaur?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's an excellent question. And it shows why we have to look past the cinematic tropes of vampires. If we dive into the deep biochemistry and behavioral ecology of the vampire bat, it's not just about the act of drinking blood. It solves two massive engineering hurdles: iron metabolism and empathy.
Empathy. From a vampire bat, let's start with the iron. How does that work?
Blood is incredibly iron-rich. A normal animal would suffer from severe iron toxicity and liver failure if it consumed the sheer volume of blood a vampire bat does. But the bat has specialized proteins like ferroportin that safely bind, transport, and process massive amounts of dietary iron. The bioengineers utilized this exact genetic trait, but tweaked it. They route that processed iron directly into the keratin structures of the imperator's beak and talons as they grow. It naturally reinforces its own biological weapons with a metallic iron alloy, making them virtually unbreakable during those woodpecker strikes.
Okay, biological metal plating makes perfect sense, but where does the empathy come in?
Vampire bats have some of the most complex, reciprocal social structures in the animal kingdom. They are highly empathetic creatures governed by evolutionary game theory. If a flockmate is sick and cannot feed for a few days, the healthy bats will actually regurgitate blood to keep their sick peer alive. They will adopt orphaned pups that aren't their own. They groom each other constantly.
They practice reciprocal altruism.
Exactly. By splicing this highly developed, ingrained social empathy into the imperator line, the engineers solved the most critical, catastrophic flaw of any biological weapon program rogue behavior. These massive flyers don't act as lone, aggressive monsters that might turn on their creators. They view their human handlers and their fellow hybrids as their flock.
So they protect them.
Yes, they form incredibly tight-knit squads that will fiercely protect each other and their human commanders at all costs, even risking their own lives. It guarantees an unbreakable, emotional loyalty that you cannot get from a reptilian brain.
It completely recontextualizes everything. It's brilliant. We have spent this entire deep dive looking at how to build the ultimate unstoppable nightmares. We've taken the heavy armor of the Ankylosaurus, the bulletproof Booligan scales of the Amazonian Arapaima, the expanding mucin slime of a deep-sea hagfish, and the acoustic flashbangs of a sperm whale.
What is truly humbling about reading these blueprints is realizing that the bioengineers didn't invent a single one of these weapons. Nature has already perfected every individual component of ultimate destruction, stealth, and survival over millions of years of rigorous evolution. The engineers simply synthesized it into a single frame.
Exactly. For you, the listener, understanding the deep biology of these genetic blueprints completely changes the way you look at the natural world around you. You don't just see a dog anymore. You see a disciplined, tactical matrix. You don't just see a turtle in a pond. You see a deep-sea thermal regulation armor system that defies abyssal pressure. You look at a tiny woodpecker in your backyard, and you see the kinetic shock absorption system of an armor-piercing sledgehammer.
It elevates our appreciation for the sheer, terrifying ingenuity of biological evolution. But I think we have to leave the listener with one final, chilling consideration that wasn't fully explored in the tactical manuals of these essays.
What did they leave out?
Throughout this entire analysis, we have discussed these chimeras strictly as controlled military assets, regulated by their handlers, kept in check by their German Shepherd discipline and their vampire bat empathy.
Right. They are weapons with a biological safety switch.
But biological weapons are still biological. Life finds a way. Within the genome of the marine siren Venetrix to make mass production easier for the military, the engineers spliced in the foundational DNA of the Tylosaurus in the modern Komodo dragon. Now, these reptiles possess a very specific reproductive trait called parthenogenesis.
Parthenogenesis, that's the ability to reproduce without a mate, right?
Exactly. It's an asexual reproduction method where a female can produce viable, genetically distinct offspring without any male fertilization, usually by utilizing the ZW chromosome system. So I pose this geopolitical nightmare to you. What happens if a global conflict ends, or the human handlers are wiped out in a strike?
Oh, no.
What happens when assets designed with 6.4 fractured toughness armor, multi-layered mammalian intellect, zero natural predators, and the ability to spontaneously clone themselves enter the natural global food web? Could a single rogue siren, or a lone mortalodon that slipped its leash, entirely rewrite Earth's ecology and wipe out natural marine life in a single generation?
A self-replicating biological tank that outsmarts primates and outswims torpedoes. That is a truly terrifying thought to leave on. Thank you to the brilliant Jose Angelo Mora and the Goja Center for providing the incredible detailed blueprints that fueled this nightmare. And thank you to you, the learner, for joining us on this massive deep dive into the speculative edge of biological warfare. Keep looking at the animals around you and stay insanely curious.